This episode is the first in the series to be an Adam-centric episode, while not being entirely focused on Adam. It's one of those that tells the story of guest characters using one of our mains as a point of view. It opens on Wilson's station, where Mike Wilson, clearly as drunk as the latter two, his brother Verge and partner Phil, walks in on said brother and partner discussing the trading of pelts with two Bannock Indians, Bruno and Numpta, with the two Braves' wives in attendance. Wilson joins the other two in harassing the Braves, and the traders, decide to hold the women prisoner until the Braves can get better pelts, and the two Indians are thrown out. I admit I'm not crazy about this idea that the Indians are weak and need help defending their wives, but I ultimately unclenched those muscles and let it go for two reasons. One, the time that this was made was in 1959, and two, it serves to further the plot because the two wind up seeking assistance from the Bannock chief Ringnose. First, though, someone else finds Bruno and goes to help, and that is where we get the Cartwright POV aspect of this episode. Ben and Adam see Joe and Hoss off as they head for San Francisco for the week. Afterwards, Ben and Adam also part ways, agreeing to meet at home later. This is when Adam finds Bruno. Once Adam gives him some water, Bruno tells Adam what happened, stopping short of putting into words what is an unspoken fear of what will be done to the women simply because they are women and Paiute women. Purnell does an amazing job at conveying his emotions with just his face when Bruno tells him the story. Bruno also tells Adam that Ringnose is being informed by Numpta, and Adam immediately questions why they didn't go to Paiute Chief Winnemucca instead, since Ringnose is a hothead, as Adam calls it. On the way to rescue the women, Adam sees the signal fires already in the distance. He goes back to Wilson's station and knocks the three men around, a simple task since they're all still drunk, and takes the women home to the Ponderosa to care for them. Mike Wilson is still conscious, and as he watches Adam leave with the women, swears revenge on the eldest Cartwright son. The idea is short-lived for the moment, however, as immediately the Bannocks come riding in and kill the other Wilson brother, as well as their partner, before going on a rampage through Sun Canyon, which results in the death of several settlers. By the end of the day, Ben walks into the saloon and hears the commotion caused by Wilson, relaying his version of events to the other men in attendance. Wilson is asked who it was, and the option of it being Winnemucca is assumed for him, to which he lies and says that it was. I honestly don't know if he says this because he just doesn't care, or did he actually not know the difference between Winnemucca of the Paiutes and Ringnose of the Bannocks? I think it could be a little bit of both, and leaning more towards the latter. He didn't care who got the blame, just so the Indians were killed. He also, of course, as Adam points out later when Ben gets home and tells him what happened, wants to save his own dirty skin by not admitting what really occurred. I just don't get the vibe that he was smart enough to think of that on his own before the option was presented to him. One of the other men in the saloon is a Major Ormsby, who decides to round up any men who are willing to go the following morning to confront the Paiutes. He makes it a point to say that he isn't a major in the army for nothing, to which I must sincerely question what got him the job in the first place, if he's going to be this naive. Ben's next course of action is to head for the offices of Bill Stewart, an attorney and the so-called first citizen of Virginia City. Side note, I believe Bill Stewart was actually a real person in Virginia City's history. He pleads with Stewart to help him keep things calm and stop a war from breaking out. Stewart says that Ormsby is no drunken fool, and I call mesquite beans on that one. He may not be a drunk, but he sure does act like a fool many times in the next few scenes. Much to Ben's and the audience's dismay, Stewart doesn't seem to take much of this seriously, but agrees to speak to the men in the morning, whatever's left of them after they sober up. Ben heads home and meets with Adam. The two compare notes on what really went down, and the following morning they go to face the mob. Surprised as we all are to see it, there aren't all that many men left to form the cavalry, and the ones that are still willing to go don't know their horse's rear end from a hole in the ground. Ben and Adam do their best to explain the correct version of what took place, and Wilson makes up a story on the fly about how Adam took up with the Indians when Wilson and his brother and partner wouldn't sell them booze or something stupid like that. Most of the men remain unswayed, presumably because one of the settlers killed in the raids was a woman. I can understand their feelings about innocent people being killed, but they still have no excuse for not making sure they were punishing the right tribe first. The hungover mob proceeds into battle, and Ormsby straight up says, in all seriousness, "With this I go to fight Indians." Duh. We finally meet the Paiutes, mainly Winnemucca and his son, Young Wolf. His son, who is the appointed war chief of the Paiutes, wants desperately to fight the whites without bothering to hear what they have to say first. There seems to be a lot of that in this episode. Winnemucca, being older and wiser and by far worthy of his station as chief, in my opinion, meets with the group with Ben at the forefront. He tells Ben that it saddens him to see him with the mob, and Ben assures him that he only wants peace and to mediate. Major Doofus starts to mouth off to the chief, and Ben promptly shuts him up. Okay, I'm sorry. I just have to say it again. How in the Sam Hill did this man get this job? He has no diplomacy skills, and he doesn't even have the common sense to know when those volunteering to fight beside him are drunk. Okay, I'm sorry. Back to it. Anthony Caruso, who plays Winnemucca, also plays Keokuk later in the series in The Deserter, and is fantastic in both. He plays another chief role where he's actually one of the bad guys, but other than that, he's great at playing the sympathetic, fatherly chief role, I think. You get the feeling that he's brave and willing to care for his people as much as he possibly can. The parley is cut short because, big shock, Wilson shoots at the Indians, and both Ben and Winnemucca try to make their camps hold their fire. In the fray, Adam is knocked out and taken prisoner by Winnemucca himself. I think in watching this episode for the podcast, I noticed for the first time that Winnemucca personally helps to drag Adam away. Ben is wounded, and one of the men pulls him to safety. Ben struggles and says, "My son," and the fella actually responds with, no joke, "No time for that." Ouch. Clearly this dude doesn't have any kids of his own. I mean, I don't either, but even I think that was a bit harsh to say to the father of someone who thinks that their son just died. Bill Stewart finds the wounded from the excursion back in Virginia City, and Wilson spews mouth diarrhea again, including an inkling that Ben ought to be hanged because he led them into a so-called trap. Please. Stewart retorts that they killed Ben's son, and then Wilson says the only useful thing that he will say or do in the entire episode, other than when he dies at the end, by informing them that Adam isn't dead. The exhausted relief in Ben's voice and on his face are heartbreaking. Stewart says that he wouldn't count on it being true, and even if it was, there would be questions as to why Adam was allowed to live. "I don't care what questions they ask as long as he's alive," Ben says. Lordy, I love him. Stewart sends Wilson to a Major Hungerford to tell him what's going on, which I think is a way to get rid of him, because he tells him to shut up just before that. I'm sure we all say the same thing at our TVs by that point. Ben is at home that night when Joe rides in and says he heard a little about what happened and came back to help while Hoss stays in Frisco. He asks where Adam is, and Ben is short with him as he tells him that Adam was taken prisoner. Joe's look of concern and the crack in his voice when he asks if Adam is all right is so sweet. Y'all know I love my Joe Adam moments. Indulge me. Winnemucca speaks with Adam the following day and trusts him to tell it straight and what is really going on, and young Wolf doesn't believe it, wanting to just kill him. I can understand to an extent his anger toward white men in general, but he seems to have this intense desire to kill Adam himself through the rest of the episode, and it kind of makes me wonder why. I can't help but question it, especially since in the next scene where Ben and Joe meet up with them, Joe says that young Wolf and Adam used to be friends when they were kids. "Children do foolish things," is the best answer we get. And it's never explained any further. Winnemucca tells both Adam and Ben in the back-to-back scenes that Ben has to stop the militia from advancing, or Adam will become the first casualty. He makes it a point to say that he bears Adam no ill will, and even still calls the Cartwrights friends. The only thing that he says that makes me scratch my head is when Ben points out that they're friends, and that this is Ben's son, and he shouldn't threaten to kill him. Winnemucca retorts with, "I have 100 sons." I get that he's saying that he counts his people as his sons, but that's not a good retort to Ben, who's only has the 3. It's a small note, but it always kind of jumps out at me. It's a little bit of a weird throwaway line. Ben and Joe meet with Hungerford, and the man who seems to care about people and fairness, at least more so than the last army man we met, agrees to march by the longer route. But that's all he can do. He does look genuine when he tells Ben that he hopes that he can get to Ringnose in time. Young Wolf again tries to sneak into the hut and kill Adam, and this time with the knife that Ben gave him once when they were children. He makes it a point to say that he's going to return the knife to Ben, implying that he's going to cut Adam's throat with it. Again, dude, why the Adam hate? Why this person specifically who's done nothing but try to help everyone from the first point in the episode? Winnemucca stops him and speaks with Adam again privately. This point until the end of the episode is honestly rather depressing, but I believe that it's done on purpose. Winnemucca seems to believe that he's going to die and speaks on how pointless it is to spend all of that man and firepower on an old chief, his son, and a handful of Paiutes. When he talks about how the white men have killed the animals and now are going after the Indian, my heart breaks. Adam's face, again, shows that his does too. We all know it's true and it's terrible. He's heard of Hungerford and knows that it's probably over if he gets there before Ben can stop it. He doubts that Ben can get there in time and wishes he could see him before he dies. A man should see his friends on the day of his death. That line is painful, mostly for those of us who already knows how the episode ends. Ben and Joe ride in, and Ringnose stands up for Numta and Bruno. Once Ben explains to him what will happen, though, Ringnose does the honorable thing and agrees to ride back with him, confessing and taking whatever blame there is. We don't get as much time with Ringnose as we do Winnemucca or even Bruno, but he does take responsibility, and that says something. Massacre notwithstanding, of course. They should not have killed those settlers. Ringnose was right there in the thick of it, and yes, what he says indicates that he only goes back to save Adam and not out of remorse for the killings, just because he owes Adam. The degree of issue that each viewer takes with that is up to them. I think we tend to forgive characters in shows and books easier than we would someone in real life. Whether that happens for you here is something I'd love to know in the comments. Sadly, part of Winnemucca's prediction comes to pass as the fighting begins before Ben can arrive with Ringnose. Winnemucca's son gets the signal to kill Adam, but Adam gets free of his restraints just in time and runs away. Wilson kills Winnemucca's son, then goes to kill Adam, making a grand show of telling him how about to kill him, and acting like it's the greatest feeling since flipping your pillow over in the middle of the night to get to the cold side. Why is it that everybody gets such a thrill out of trying to murder Adam anyway? Maybe this is more of an Adam episode than I thought. Of course, Adam has enough time to perfectly throw a knife and kill Wilson. Finally. Unfortunately, he gets away and catches up to Ben too late to stop the fighting before it stops itself. Everyone, except for Major Hungerford, a handful of soldiers and Paiutes, and Winnemucca himself, have died. The Major instructs his captain to tell the other men left what happened and why. Ben and Adam find Winnemucca mourning his son who lay dead before him. He says he mourns all of his dead. The final line of the episode is the chief singing the death prayers of his people. The ending of this episode gives me pain in the pit of my stomach, the way all beautifully haunting scenes in TV do. It's telling an important story with a clear message. The fighting was pointless and could have been stopped more than once. At the end, all those left standing know how senseless the deaths are. The chief predicted his death would happen, but it's sadder that he lived and his people, including his son, died. I love this one in the way that I love a lot of Adam episodes, and also a lot of emotional ones in general. I find myself missing Haas. Dan must have taken a break that week, and I wonder what it would have added to the story to have had him there worrying after Adam and pointing out how stupid the fighting is, as only Hoss can. But I love that we get to see Joe worry about Adam independent of anything or anyone else. Those of us who love the underrated relationship of these two will take these little scene nuggets and cherish them. Ben's fear for the safety of his firstborn is palpable as well, and I'm totally here for it. Virginia City as a whole seems to be growing more interested in the opinions of the Cartwrights by this point, and it's great. It'll keep getting better. It's always a joy to have Anthony Caruso guest star, and he knocks it out of the park as Wittamaka. Jack Warden is always a good baddie, and Wilson is totally punchable from start to finish. If you enjoy watching for these little family moments between the Cartwrights, this one is good for that. If you enjoy the more history-oriented episodes, this one is good for that as well. If you've seen it, let us know what you think.